T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. Episode 79, I believe. It's a good time to be alive. I love 79. It's a good year. Today, very good year. Loved it. Favorite. Today we've got a newcomer. Loken Plays is joining me, a recent member of the Info Runners, along with Astropub and Execute, who are normally on this show, and also your own content creator surrounding Star Citizen stuff. I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. And to start out, I'd love to hear kind of your own style of content, what you focus on making, and why Star Citizen.
So, obviously, as beautifully introduced, my name is Loken Plays. For those of you who don't know who I am, I've been making content on Twitch and more recently on YouTube for the past 8 years. So I'm been around a few games, to say the very least, and more recently, I've started to really focus my attentions on Star Citizen. So more recently being since probably about 2018, 2019. So recent in terms of my career, but not recent in terms of anything else. The reason for Star Citizen is, honestly, I am a absolutely gargantuan sci-fi fan, and space fascinates me beyond anything else. And what Star Citizen aims to create and is creating is something that just I felt couldn't be ignored and needed to be covered. And I love basically covering the game and checking out all it's got to offer. I do brand myself as a primarily Star Citizen content creator who has interest in doing other variety bits and pieces too. So variety being other video games, new releases, that kind of stuff. But usually it's in the sci-fi realm. Usually it's got something to do with space. That's me.
You and me both. I didn't even play MMOs before or even like spaceship flying games really before this. I just love sci-fi, and this game seems to be doing a good job with it.
Oh, it most certainly is.
And I see you might be a Mass Effect fan, I think, in the background there.
Oh yeah, we've got a few. We've got Mass Effect there. We've got Star Wars there. So
yeah. I mean, that's right up my alley. Like, I love Mass Effect. I can't wait for the new one. Whatever they decide to do with it. That's Are you watching Starfield at all?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I mean, any because obviously my interests are as also variety gaming as well. I keep an eye on lots of different games, but anything with sci-fi, I usually have a hawk eye on it. And Starfield, I don't know why people continue to compare it to Star Citizen, but that's a conversation for the day. But it looks good.
It's a space game. If it has spaceships in it, it must be a
space game. We can go. Yeah, it's a space game. You can fly a ship around and go to planets. So yeah, competitor.
Yep, obviously trying to take it down. the Star Citizen killer, if you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Like all the other Star Citizen killers.
So do you have a favorite game then? One that really inspired you to get started making content?
I have a favorite game. Oh gosh, that's a really good one. Do you know, honestly, and I know this is going to sound really. It's going to be another conversation, but I actually genuinely Mass Effect. Mass Effect was probably the first game I really watched in development from the very beginning of it, when it had concept work and at that point very early sort of video docs that were coming out through to its inception and then its actual release, and that got me really interested in the game's process as a whole. Just watching that development, and also the game was at that point BioWare at their absolute finest. So
gosh,
that really got me in there.
I missed that.
Deus Ex as well, absolutely fantastic game, series of games.
Good choice.
Oh yeah, there are quite a few landmark ones for me, but those are probably the two that really got me in there and got me properly hooked on games. But yeah,
you bring up Deus Ex, and one of the things that people always loved about the series was kind of the immersive sim sort of act by the rules and get to see the consequences. Do you see that in Star Citizen as well?
I blinking hope so, and then some, because ultimately what we've been that kind of freeform gameplay, that kind of ability to engage in the quote unquote sandbox level of whatever it is you're trying to achieve and approach it in different ways and engage in your own sort of almost your own character, you play it your way, is extremely compelling. And the kind of sandbox environment that Star Citizen is aiming to create and is, they're taking steps forward all the time. I would hope and have my fingers crossed that that is the kind of gameplay we end up getting, because that will be so compelling, so immersive as well.
Yeah, you see signs of it, like with some of the big name features they come up with, and I really hope they keep carrying that forward because it adds so much interest to the gameplay.
Oh, I really hope so. I really do, because it's the perfect. If everything goes to plan and they deliver on what they said, it is the perfect environment to be like one of the most immersive and just crazy, awesome experiences out there. So I mean, fingers crossed in that one.
Yeah, all the fingers and the toes crossed. So, in terms of specific content that's surrounding Star Citizen, you said you've been streaming a long time, but you just recently started doing YouTube stuff. Is there any specific angle on the content that you make on YouTube that you want to focus on?
So right now I have been so the YouTube channel for me is new, it's young, it's something I've only started doing in the last 6 or 7 months. So I'm established myself, finding my feet, really getting my teeth into it. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's a very different process to Twitch and live streaming. In a lot of ways, it's actually a healthier and better creative process in a lot of instances. In specific regards to Star Citizen, what I've started to do is I was sort of commenting more on, inside Star Citizen episodes, what they released there. I did roundups on monthly reports, that kind of thing. But what I'm aiming to transition into is start and launch my series called Afterburner, which is going to be a series of Top Gear style reviews on ships, effectively, and giving some consumer advice here and there, but trying to do it a little bit differently, keeping them sort of like concise and films, bands. Giving a little bit of a humorous anecdotal twist to things, keeping it more inverse rather than sort of like maybe a complete consumer advice thing where I say, to gamers, I'd say more, citizens of the verse, that kind of thing. So it's in development. It's the first episode's almost complete. So that's what I'm trying to focus on. And then honestly, from there, I'm open.
Cool.
I've got, I joined the Inforunners in no small part to try and suck in as much information and learn as much as I humanly can, and get ideas really, because,
there's so many places to fit in with Stars. I mean, there's so many things to know with Star Citizen, information coming out of every corner. There's tons of ways to go about it. That's kind of, I've always sort of just done whatever was interesting at any given point, and I think that it gives you a lot of freedom to find what works for you.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. I mean, if something's interesting and cool, I'll try and make a video on it, because I think it's like, well, hey, this is awesome. I want to share this information out to people.
Exactly.
So yeah.
In terms of ships, are you a ship person? I mean, you said you wanted to focus on the reviews. Is that the thing that really drives you with this game?
It's one of several things that really drive me the game. The fact that the thing that really draws me to Star Citizen isn't the fact it just focuses on one aspect. It's the fact that it focuses on several aspects of gameplay. It's when anyone asks me, on a broadcast, what is Star Citizen? I always give the same sort of stock response, which is, it's a Starship Sim game, but it's also a sandbox, and it's also an MMO, and it's also a GTA kind of style, game. It's all of these wrapped into one. It's kind of like a live your life in the verse type thing. So, though ships are definitely a massive attraction to me, and I absolutely adore them, and I love the machinery, and I love all the vehicles. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely a huge attraction.
Mm-hmm. Well, IAE is kind of a big moment for ships, and it's always a fun time for anybody who likes ships. I've never been huge on ships, but it's definitely interesting. There's always something going on. There's news dropping, and this year we've got 2 ships. We've got multiple ships coming, but we know that there are 2 at least that will be out by the time this airs. I don't actually know the specific day that this airs. I know that Anvil has something planned as well, but this might be coming out before that. Either way, let's talk about Drake ships today. We've got the Corsair and the Cutter. Both have now been introduced officially in the PTU. Let's talk about the Corsair first. What are your thoughts on it? Who's it competing with, and how does it fit in?
So I actually, it's quite fortuitous actually, because I was playing about with the ship just last night. So the Corsair is well, it's constellation sized for all intents and purposes. So it's that kind of size and scale. That will be its direct competitor as well, would be the Constellation. And I mean, I guess you could probably say the Mercury Star and the 400i, but those are smaller. The 400i is definitely smaller, but the Mercury Star one is probably around the same sort of scale as well in terms of what it can carry in the rear cargo bay. Yeah. Its SEU capacity. The Drake Cutter though is fundamentally your full send multi-crew Drake ship. You know,
the Corsair.
The Corsair. Okay. It's a full send sort of multi-crew ship, and it is it's a very Drake take on a very loose interpretation of exploration. You know, I do love the commitment to the brand image of, yes, we're totally just making an exploration ship. Don't worry about the 6 guns that are pilots operated and the 3 turrets on it.
Yeah,
it's just for protection.
We're just exploring with defenses. It's a dangerous place out there, right?
Exactly. We come in peace, everybody. We really do.
At the same time, I don't know if they've talked about specific scanners on there, but when you look at other exploration ships like the 600 or the Carrack or even something smaller like the 400i, they all have these dedicated scanning modules and sort of table displays that the Corsair doesn't have. The Corsair just has like a regular old lunch table, I guess is like Drake's version of the you're gonna have to have Legos on there to show where all the things in the system are. But do you think that's gonna be a downside to it in terms of exploration?
I truly, genuinely, and wholeheartedly don't believe it's for exploration, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Just a front.
The ship is absolutely 100% a military craft. It is designed for mid-size engagements. It has a payload that can be, tailored toward either more, fighter defense, or if you decide to fix those guns rather than gimbal them with size 5s and size 4s, you have actually fairly decent mid to large ship, capabilities. Engaging them, and it is a more military craft in my personal opinion. Can it be used for exploration? I'm sure it can, but it's like saying the Millennium Falcon is a freighter. Yeah, it's a freighter, but it comes sold with all of the hard points you need for all the really big guns. It's that kind of ethos, and I'm okay with that. I am.
Do you think that your opinion of that could change if it were, and when it will be balanced or nerfed, as they call it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, my opinion is just that. It is just my opinion, and it is based solely on the play I've had on the PTU. Obviously, we, as seasoned veterans of Star Citizen, know that when a ship comes out, after a few weeks of the hands of the players, obviously CIG keeps a very close eye on them and will start to tailor things and tweak things accordingly. For people who are asking me how I think it flies, I say I refuse to comment because ultimately it will change. And that ship's probably going to change because it's a little too easy to dance in it right now, for a ship of that scale at least. So my opinion may very well change, but I still stand by the idea that ship is predominantly and primarily a military craft, or at very least a mercenary ship. And it's a beautiful ship for it. It's so very, very good at it. From its EVA patch to its elevator that goes on the roof and the bottom of the ship as well. It's a fantastic vessel for that kind of a platform.
It's got a lot of interactivity, which I like. And I wonder, as we continue on and components start to become more important, you can customize these ships how you want them to fly and what kind of role you want them to play. If this sort of ship, a ship that's called an explorer but maybe is better at more combat-focused roles, or something like the MSR that is a data runner, what could be better at smuggling, I wonder if these ships will be acknowledged by CIG as being good for those roles, even though they're not necessarily titled as being good for those roles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and I do hope for the same thing. I mean, we could hopefully see, specific SKUs of certain ships brought out in the future. So an MSR that's maybe skewed, takes the data running aspect out of it, does something else. Or if they wanted to, they could potentially, with componentry changes, we can just customize our ships to the way we see them fitting better for our own needs and purposes. So let's take the example of the Corsair. It's obviously the new hotness, and we say, fine, this is a good chassis, but I want to use it for search and rescue rather than I want to use it for combat ops or exploration. I hope that I could do things like change componentry out. So I'll remove some guns, but I'll replace it with some sensors or something like that, and give me the flexibility to change the ship out a little bit more to my own tailor specific requirements. I truly couldn't tell you right now whether or not that's a feature that they can put in. I have no idea. CIG surprised me before, but if nothing else, we've seen, the Cutlass has several SKUs, the rescue variant, the police variant. So I wouldn't put it. It's not outlandish for them to at least sell the same chassis with different role SKUs.
And I think even with the hard points and components being able to be changed out, you can kind of change what you're doing. I really would like to gear an RSI Apollo, to be an exploration ship. And that was kind of one of my dream ships. And then they came out with the C1 Spirit, which kind of lands in that spot. But at the same time, I'm still thinking about those ships where you could change things out and have them be a little bit more specialized. Yeah,
I do like the idea of just being able to take a chassis and make it your own. It's one of the like I said, it'll be complicated from a gameplay perspective, but it'll be very, very cool. I'd love to see it. I really, really would.
You said that the Corsair fits into a good spot next to kind of the Constellation, maybe even comparable to something like the MSR or a 400i.
Yeah.
How do you think it fits into the lineup in Drake's ships, though? You mentioned the Cutlass earlier. Do you think that it nailed a good spot there?
Yeah, I definitely think it fits a gap in the market. I mean, I'm seeing this come out now more and more, because we're getting a bigger, fuller catalog of ships from manufacturers. It does appear that CIG has several size categories they want to try and achieve from the ship team, and it's at that end. It's usually have a starter, then have something slightly larger than the starter, then have a mid-scale sized ship that allows for multi-crew, and then you get bigger from there. A lot of manufacturers have ships now in the 400i Constellation scale, and I think that Corsair was missing that. Drake was missing that. And with that addition, I think it fits in very nicely. I mean, it's bigger than the Cutlass, so if you like what the Cutlass can do, but you want more multi-crew and sort of a ship you can really live in and work out of and be your home, then the Corsair is a fabulous choice, and it gives a lot of flexibility as well.
How does it compare to a Caterpillar? Do you know?
It is a lot smaller than a Caterpillar.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, it's not nearly as maneuverable or as killy. For lack of a better word, it's not quite as deadly as well. So it's definitely the cat's a good ship. It's a good vessel, but yeah, it's definitely. It's going to be a small to mid cargo hauler, and I don't think the cargo you're hauling is going to be yours. I don't think you've bought it.
So Drake's got, let's see, they don't have a starter ship. They don't have something like Aurora sized. Yeah. We know that they have the cutter coming, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is kind of like a sort of advanced starter size. I don't know the exact dimensions. I don't think they've said anything, but around 15 to 25 meters, we'll say. You got the Cutlass, which is coming in around 30 meters, the Corsair, which is around like 40 to 50 meters, I think, and then the Caterpillar, which is larger than that. And obviously, going above and beyond, you have like the Kraken. Drake seems like they're pretty set on not even just having ships of all sizes, because some of these manufacturers do have ships of those sizes, but they're special ships. Drake just straight up has a general ship in almost every class. Does any other manufacturer have that? Maybe Aegis? I can't think of one.
I think you may be right. I think that's I think that is the selling point of a Drake ship, though. It's that they are just these multi-role utility, great frontier style ships. They're designed to just basically be the jack of all trades and the master of absolutely none of them.
Yeah,
and that's their whole manufacturer's ethos. Taking away the whole pirate part from one side here. That is generally speaking what Drake does, and they do it very, very, very well. I would say maybe RSI, but even then, it might be a bit limited. But yeah, I think they're the only one that literally just does multi-role, and that's pretty much all they do.
I could see RSI and MISC both kind of filling that out pretty quickly for both of them. I don't think. MISC really has anything that competes above the Freelancer, unless I'm forgetting. They just have the whole series after that, right? And the Starlit and the Starfarer?
Yeah, they do. And we'll see the Odyssey as well at some point.
Right. But
yeah, they're more skewed toward exploration / hauling, if I'm honest. That's kind of MISC's bag. So that's a really good point you make, actually. I haven't really considered this before. RSI would be the only one I put on the table saying maybe.
And even then we could use something mid-size for RSI, something smaller than the Connie but bigger than the Aurora, unless I'm missing something. I know the Mantis is in there, but that's very specialized. Like,
it doesn't count. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
There isn't actually anything at that size and scale. There's certainly nothing at the freelance, words. Cutlass. The freelancer cutlass size scale.
Oh man, now I'm just imagining a RSI ship.
The Apollo probably would be that.
Oh yeah, that's fair. It is again a specialized ship, so no saying how much that will actually, like for cargo hold especially. I don't know how much that's going to do for you, but I would love to see another ship of that sort of size range around the Cutlass to MSR size range with RSI's new design language. Ooh.
Yeah, that would be very, very nice.
That'd be cool.
I do like the new design language. I'm not so much of a fan of the old one, I'm not going to lie, but the new design language is looking very tasty.
Yeah, the Constellation, actually RSI's style in general was one of my least favorite until they released like the Apollo and the Mantis, and they kind of started to get some of that newer style on. But like the Connie and the Aurora and even the Bengal have a very old look to them, which is on purpose. But
yeah, I mean, and it's, as you say, it's a completely deliberate thing, but I'm 1000% with you, mate. You know, the old school vibe, especially the Constellation, is just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But their new school gear and some of the concept art we've seen for other ships is just, it's looking really, really, really dang good.
Yeah. And also the designers themselves at CIG have just gotten so much better.
Oh yeah, they really have. They get better with every single ship.
Yeah. One of the things that excites me about all these new ships, like I just started writing my impressions for the Corsair, and my main topic is like, I don't care about the ship. I care about how good they're getting at making them. Because that means that all of these other ships that I like but are such a drag because of their status, because they're missing switches and lights and like polish and all this stuff, are going to be just as good as the Corsair. And that thing is like the 400i, the Raft, the Corsair, all of these recent ships have been super, super pleasant to use.
Yeah, they really have. And they've been launching them closer and closer to what they dub their gold standard, if you know what I mean. They are... Whereas a lot of the older ships pre the ones you mentioned have had or need to have work done to them to bring them up to a standard to have physicalized componentry and all this business. The ones that we released recently, I'm just like, they were pretty much out the box, ready to go, delivered. And there's very little that needs to be adjusted in them. Yeah. Me and Paul were talking about that on the last episode about how the ships they've started to release more recently feel like they're, like you said, they're released without being so handicapped, without being behind what the standard is. Like 5 years ago, they could have said, okay, this is our gold standard. I don't even think they were saying gold standard 5 years ago. Let's say 3 years ago, they could have said, this is our gold standard for the Cutlass Black. But the ships that were coming out at the time were like nowhere near the quality of that Cutlass Black. Whereas now they're like, okay, the Saber is our gold standard, and the Corsair is really not that far off from it. So in the future, you imagine the Corsair wouldn't need as much work, which is, it's good to see. And I'm glad they're kind of starting to close that gap. Yeah, and they appear to, from just a pure development pipeline, be better now at selecting which ships need to come out when, because we've got a lot of examples of ships. Carrack is going to be my main one because it's one of my favorite ships in the game that is so unutterably handicapped because half of its functionality isn't available because the gameplay hasn't simply been designed for it yet. And they are skewing away from releasing ships like that now and keeping within the remits of what is currently available in gameplay, so they can deliver ships that are ready to use and will not require rethink once these functions come in, because you can only predict so much into the future. And it might actually require significant change on a ship to make the feature that they thought would fit or something along those lines. It's just, it's nice to see.
And they said, too, that they wanted to stop. I think this was about a year and a half ago. This would have Yeah, this was a year, almost 2 years ago at this point, I believe. They on ISC, they came out and said they wanted to stop releasing ships without their main functionality working. And I kind of got on their case about that with the 400i being an explorer without the exploration sort of scanning stuff. It's nitpicky, but they have gotten better at it. You can see that like the Vulture's not coming out until salvage is done. The SRV is not coming out until tractor beams are done. They're being better about that. But I do...
It sets expectations.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's good. I do hope that the older ships that we have start to receive some of this gameplay without them feeling the need to release a ship for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I really do. And that's my... I wouldn't say biggest concern, but it's definitely a concern as a backer and a player, as you know, and also just somebody who keeps an eye on this game. You know, we do have a back catalogue of quite a few really awesome ships, but they really could use some love. And I just wonder when they're going to get around to doing it, because there are only so many people who can work. And with CIG's funding, you know, model, the new stuff tends to get priority, you know?
See, and that's kind of like the obvious point. But at the same time, I'm sitting here wondering to myself, how much less would they actually sell if they brought the Perseus back up with all these new players who have jumped in the last 2 years and made another concept sale with that, putting that into production instead of introducing something like the rumored Galaxy, which is kind of the same size, shape, and company ship.
Yeah. I mean, you might very well be correct. I'm not 1,000. I mean, there's no data to.
There's no way of knowing. Yeah.
Another, so there's no way of knowing.
Yeah.
I can respect CIG's position of wanting to continue to bring new, because new is generally perceived as interesting and generally people want to buy it. But I would love to see some of those ships that we've got that have been put on the back burner. I mean, I just saw my Legionnaire got put on the back burner actually just last week, which was a bit of a shame, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And you know, they may very well be able to actually get decent amounts of sales through. I mean, I don't know whether or not the Perseus probably will go up on sale during IAE, I believe. But
yeah, probably.
Yeah, if they made a bit more of a deal of it, then it might very well generate similar revenue and income. But you mentioned the Galaxy, and I'm quite excited about that. Actually, I've got to be honest with you, if the rumors are true.
Yeah, I honestly haven't really followed that much. But, you know, it's... From what I have seen, it's an interesting place to be putting a ship. I feel like going back to what we were just talking about, Drake's lineup with the Corsair and the Vulture, and now even the Cutter coming in. Drake is the goal. This is the bar, I think, for a manufacturer, and Star Citizen they should be looking at Drake's lineup of ships and saying, we got to do this for each of these major companies. MISC, RSI, Aegis, Anvil, CNOU, they all need to have this many ships going up the ladder that people can upgrade to. And I think filling that out would be good. From what I hear, though, the Galaxy is way outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree to a certain extent that I would like to see at least, I don't know if I could see every single manufacturer having a ship for every single rung of the ladder. I don't know if, like, for example,
every role.
Yeah, I don't foresee, for example, Argo being able to do that, or or MISC. But the general, you know, we have some general core manufacturers. Aegis, we have RSI.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, you know, Crusader, these big manufacturers, kind of like they have like these core manufacturers. I'd love to see them having ships for every rung within reason. That would be lovely. The Galaxy, from what I can see and what I've heard, and this is all for the record here, hearsay, rumor, and leaks.
And for anybody, real quick before you do that, for anybody who doesn't want leaks, I always like to leave a little warning in there. Feel free to skip ahead a couple of minutes, because this one's not officially unveiled at the point of this podcast.
Not official. This is all just speculation. Speculation says that it's supposed to be a Carrack-sized exploration ship, basically, which is interesting because RSI doesn't have anything in that category yet, and it's basically, I've been hearing the rumblings of it basically being the Constellation but done correctly, and kind of the spirit of what that wanted to achieve, but, you know, on a scale that actually makes sense for an actual hyper long range exploration
Oh,
vessel.
that actually does sound really nice.
Mm.
When you
And
describe
also,
it like that.
and it's right up where the Odyssey and the Carrack is. So it's that skew of these very large, I'd say, capital grade exploration vessels, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But we will obviously have to wait and see whether or not those rumors come true or not.
And
It's
those
very tempting, though.
With the amount of people who want to do exploration, which is the majority, it is the largest. Whenever there's a poll, there's the largest group of people say they want to do exploration, and I think a lot of people don't actually want to. I think they're thinking of exploration and maybe the elite dangerous side of things, where you're discovering planets and going to different star systems and doing this like epic idea of exploration. But judging by the interest in them, those ships are kind of the holy grail for the community, the Carrack, the Odyssey, and this galaxy that you're talking about.
Yeah, they seem to always they get a lot of hype, a lot of attention. I remember there was a lot of hype around the Odyssey when that was unveiled. Obviously, it didn't help that this community, that CIG may have been a little bit overzealous with what they said about the Odyssey.
I don't think they did a good job with that.
They did not do a good job. Calling it a Carrack killer is not a great way of selling a ship, and then going back on that. But mistakes are made. We learn from our mistakes. So
They're victims of the hype.
They were victims of the hype, yeah. And they're not the first company to fall prey to that, and they won't be the last. But exploration, as you say, it's a very romantic thing for any sci-fi lover, because I don't know about you, but for me, some of my biggest influences, it was Star Trek, for example. Where and this big, beautiful, specialist sciencey ship, and you're going off to boldly go where no one's gone before, and it's a hugely evocative part of sci-fi culture. And so to have ships and a gameplay that supports that, and also has the size and scale to make you feel as though you live in your own Star Trek episode, I can absolutely see why people are going to get jazzed about it. But whether there are plenty of other people that are interested in other bits and pieces too. Military is probably the other biggest skew, or the combat side of things.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of. Go ahead.
Go on.
No, please.
I was just going to say, there are lots of lots of different ships, lots of different types of gameplays and people, and it's one of the best things about the game. But exploration, galaxy. I hope it is similar to what I've heard rumored. We will see for sure whether or not that's the case.
It sounds pretty cool if it is, and it'd be nice if it was actually in production. But again, going back to kind of the fact that a lot of ships are still waiting for their own gameplay, and we're still bringing in new ones, tends to bug a lot of people. And I think that'll always be an ongoing topic with this, because a lot of they might never catch up to the backlog of ships they need to put in.
They may very well not. I mean, simply put, they're already up to 100+ ships, aren't they? But that's in game, and not talking about all the ones that aren't finished yet. And that's a lot of vehicles for anything. It's a lot of equipment, especially to the level that CIG goes in each vehicle. These are all bespoke machines that aren't far off being actually like, okay, well, if we just put this into CAD, we start manufacturing these types out. Yeah, I mean, the point is they go way beyond any regular game when it comes to starships, and we mentioned Starfield a little while ago. It's the same deal with that as well. I absolutely guarantee that Starfield ships' interiors will not match up to their exteriors, because they just don't. That's just not the way traditional games development goes when it comes to these things. So Star Citizen's ships are massively complicated, and they're beautiful at the same time. But I can 100% see why people are annoyed, the fact that there's this huge backlog, and well, where's my particular ship that I backed for the game, because that's the one that really interested me, and it's not here yet. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle, unless they were to really increase the number of people who are working on ships. Then I don't see us getting through that backlog anytime soon.
And they will, of course. I mean, they're trying to hire so many people now. They've got to do it. It's just they've put themselves in a tough position. I mean, it's nobody's fault, but TIG's. But they've gotten into this cycle of needing to make enough money to pay all these people to make this game that is absolutely massive, only because of the way it's expanded in order to make the money. It's just like a vicious cycle. And
it is. And yeah, as you say, you know, they are expanding rapidly. And I don't think between you and me that we'll see the ship model now of the ship sale model, sorry, of, you know, being able to purchase a ship and the concept sale thing ending now. They used to, you know, a little while ago, and it's still the official line that when beta comes into play and then released, that we won't see ship sales anymore. But I'm personally of the opinion that that's no longer going to be the case. I don't think it's feasible, and I think it's been too successful to want to stop it.
I agree with you in that I don't think we'll see the end of ship sales, but I do really, really hope and expect that they will change the model. That it will be, they sell a concept, it comes out a quarter later, and everybody has access to it in game right when it comes out. I think maybe if you buy the concept, you get a specific skin with it or something, but they can't keep walling off ships, especially when we get to the beta and live release sort of scenarios.
I think it's a very fair interpretation of it, and I think that would be the logical you know, evolution for it, for a game that is at least that has been deployed and is live and is, you know, available to the masses, and it is a game, not just an alpha.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, you know, I call it a game these days because it is a game, but I have to remind myself it's actually an alpha, and
honestly, at times only barely feels like it. Like, it's just, I can never get over the fact that we have come so far from what I would have called an alpha at times during maybe 3.6, 3.8 time to now almost 4.0, and I would still say it's still just the brink of an alpha, because all of the stuff that has changed hasn't really changed the underlying fundamentals of the game yet. We're still waiting on that with resource management and PES and Gen 12 and all that jazz.
Yeah. But we're on the precipice of it. We really are. All of the stuff they said about Inside Star Citizen and all the stuff they said at CitizenCon, we are on the brink of massive change. And I'm really up for it. I can't wait to see what happens.
I'm excited for it. I feel like I made a video like a good year and a half now, and I stand by the video, but in the video I had this whole theory of the different phases of development Star Citizen went through, and I called phase 4 what we kind of started last year around 314-ish to getting in these like actual major defining changes into the game, and I feel like we're in the thick of it, and it's all about to start changing a lot faster, like you said.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I would agree with that video as well. That is exactly where we are right now. You know, we're seeing lots of these projects, these multi-year long projects. You know, the idea of, you know, architecture for server meshing with pairs coming into play, Gen 12 renderer, all, you know, we've been hearing about them, we've been seeing their development over years, and now I think we're about to see the fruits of those labors, and I think we're going to have another. Yeah, I know, right? We're going to hopefully finally see another metamorphic kind of change to Star Citizen, a bit like the change between 2.0 to 3.0. I think it's going to be the same in that regard.
To be honest, if the change from 3.18 or 19 or whatever before 4.0 to 4.0 is the same caliber as 2.6 to 3.0 was, 4.0 is going to be incredible, because that was a huge change. 2.6 to 3.0, just like you said, I think before we started, you thought this was all snake oil before 3.0, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be absolutely, you know, hand up. I would commonly say on streams when I was playing other games, people could bring up Star Citizen, and I'd say it's just this alpha where you barely do anything. You stand around a hangar and you look at a nice, pretty ship. Great, cool.
Well, you weren't wrong.
I can't get excited over this. There's no gameplay here. I don't see any of these big, huge concepts that CIG have been selling. It's snake oil, and I would say that I just don't believe it. And then I remember very distinctly, and I tell the story all the time to people. One of my community members, a man who goes by the name of Qpan, he told me, and he said, "Oh, you know that he gets around, doesn't he? See, he's one of my oldest community members, and he said, "Look, I was on another game. I was, you know, going on my usual tirade about it's snake oil." He said, "Look,
it's a scam.
It's a scam." But he said, "Look, 3.0 has just dropped. Install it and try it. Just try it." He said, "If you don't like it after that, fair enough." I was like, "All right, fine. You know, how can I come from and have an opinion if I'm not informed?" So I went, tried it, and I was like, oh, this is Oh, you can fly away from the station now. Oh, you could go to planet. Oh, and I was like,
actual space.
oh, it's actually a game now. Okay, right. At that point, that's when I started making content. I was like, oh, it's a game now. Things are happening. It's not snake oil.
And
no.
that was how it felt. I mean, for me, I didn't even really consider playing it regularly before 3.0. I was following, and it was 2017 when I started to get serious about it. But it wasn't until you could go to a planet, run a mission, and hang out with friends that I was like, okay, this is something I can try. And I think if 4.0 has that same effect, brings in server meshing, and suddenly a bunch of people look and see, wait, this game's stable. Wait, hold on, there's more than one star system. Wait, they're actually doing it. You could have that same exact kind of reaction on a mass scale of people who are like, it's time. It's exciting.
It will be a entry point, a getting on point for a lot of people. I guarantee that. That is 100%. When people see, I reckon when people see a stable 60 FPS game with, with server meshing or the very first iteration of it to allow for pyro, and we'll see a ship go through those the warp gate, the wormhole gate through into a system, and they see that not in a convention floor, but actually see that on a live stream or in a YouTube video, that will be the point that they go, oh, okay, now it's time to now it's time to put the bigger boy pants on. This is an actual game. We're getting involved in this, and will be a huge getting on point for so many new people.
The hope is that they will have a better new player experience prepared by then. The interaction system, the FPS system, and obviously better frame rates because of Gen 12 and Vulkan API and stuff. We really hope that stuff is in by 4.0. But if it is, if they can actually package it up and it's not crazy buggy like 3.0 was, maybe it'll be until 4.1 that's actually good, but that could be really big.
It could be absolutely massive. CRG will see another huge influx of people coming in. I mean, from just prior experience, I really don't feel like we're going to see a stable game until I've had a couple of patches out from there. Because you change that much core code, you put that much new technology in, it's going to be spaghetti for a while. But they'll line it out, and then it'll just be magnificent, I hope, and it'll provide the framework for what we'll see for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Because this is the architecture that will allow for the rest of the game to be developed in terms of, the server meshing and the multiple planets and all of the big scale concepts that have been touted but really haven't had anything too tangible till now.
And it'll actually feel like what Star Citizen is supposed to feel like, whatever that might be.
Exactly.
So to finish up, because we were going on the Corsair, and when I say finish up, I mean about the Corsair. We're going to talk about the Cutter here in a minute. But just to kind of wrap things up on the Corsair, we were talking about the increased fidelity, features, interactivity that they've been building into the ships as they go along. What are some of the things, let's say 3 to 5 things with the Corsair that you are seeing that are unlike other ships, something that they've actually seemed to progress in terms of design?
I'm seeing an extremely sensible layout and flow of the ship's interior from move the ship. What I mean by that is the entry points. You've got 2 specific entry points that are easy to access from the ground, which is great. The MSR is a glaring omission to that one.
We all like to pick on it.
Yep, sorry, but it's there, and I'm going to do it because it needs that. I am seeing I'm seeing all of the physicalized componentry in a sensible location where it can be easily accessed and would be there set up ready to go for engineering gameplay and repair a sort of gameplay. What else am I seeing? I'm seeing features like, sensible just again, sensible flow throughout the ship. Movement throughout the ship is being placed in such a way that is easy to move from the cockpit to the to the turret room to the actual mess hall. It's all in a layout that makes logical sense. I'm seeing a very sensible usage of a standardized sized EVA port / docking port. So we've got that hard lock capability if you want to dock a ship in the future. That's there on the starboard side of the ship. And I am just seeing a competence level in terms of the lighting, in terms of the functionality of the vessel that is just they're getting so damned good at creating these vessels now. You know, it really feels like all of the groundwork on that ship is there. They just need to flick on the functionality for things like the mess hall, you know, for actually to dispense food and things.
Yeah.
And you know, the requirement to use the facilities and the bathrooms and whatnot. They just need to flick that on. It's all there. It's ready to go. It's just, you know, flick a switch type thing and it'll be on. The ship is one of the most feature complete, and I think one of the best realizations of a concept to date. My only issue with it, if I'm gonna, because I want to put this in, is I think the landing gear is too low. It makes it really difficult to land on rough terrain.
It does sit very low, yeah.
It's very low. I landed it on a couple of planets, and it was like I had real trouble because it needs to be a little higher.
Stealthy Drake over here, yeah. I really like the floodlights on the back that are separate from the other lights. That's really cool. They mentioned it in a monthly report earlier, and it's just really nice to see these sort of flourishes of like,
oh yeah, 100%.
It makes the ship feel like it's more than just a single button ship, you know, a turn off, turn on kind of ship. You actually have different parts of the ship you can use without the ship even being on or moving.
And it's logical, and it's one of those things that would not have been thought about unless they'd had all of the experiences of all the other ships and all the player feedback saying, well, we need lights in the back here because the ship might be offline, but I still need to be able to see out the back. You know, and having that as a separate circuit is just it's yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think this is the first Drake ship I've seen that has what appear to be sort of their finalized style for door switches too. Like the switches, the buttons feel really nice.
Yes, that's a very good point actually, because they've got the new sort of the door button technology that a lot of other ships have had, are touch panels. But I love the fact that the big fat tactile buttons on a Drake ship, and they look great, and it fits the whole flow. And actually, talking about doors, that's the other thing I thought about the ship, which is very good, is you can see it's absolutely geared toward the decompression gameplay, because there's lots of sectioned off sections that would make sense to, you know, if one place got decompressed, you can close it off. It just makes a lot of sense in that regard.
The airlock that you mentioned, it functions really well. And all the sound effects are nice. It really sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, their sound design's always been great, but I love the fact that ultimately the Corsair sounds like in terms of engine tone, it sounds like a bigger Cutlass. And I really, really like that.
Yeah, it hits hard. The Drake's, their thrusters always look really good too.
Oh, they're so cool. The way they vector and they move and stuff. It's just, it's so cool.
Yeah, God, I love it. So the Corsair is out as of the recording of this, and it will definitely be out on the live game as of the publishing of this episode. But there's another ship that gets introduced after this recording, but before the publishing, and that is the Drake Cutter. A smaller, sort of advanced starter looking kind of ship. We know from the monthly reports it has an interior, it has a habitation room, and we've actually seen, I've got a statement here from the September monthly report where they said, quote, "It was a great opportunity for us to push the workflow and visuals forward. For example, exterior lighting states, better looking glass and glows on exterior lights, new damage trends, and new artwork for countermeasures." This isn't confirmed to be for the Cutter, but it was for an unannounced ship that was almost done in September. So I'm assuming that must be what it is. But we haven't seen too much of it. They've just shown a picture of it in the PTU in the Expo Center. What have you kind of gathered from it, from the info you've heard and that picture and what we've seen of it?
So I think advanced starter is a really, really good way to put it, because it's not an Aurora, it's not a Mustang, it's not that small. It's definitely more Avenger Titan sized. And from the images I've seen, which are a few of the leaked images that have come out for it, and there's some nice sort of in-game renders. It is a single person starter ship for all intents and purposes. I believe that the ship is supposed to have about 4 SE of cargo. It's basically got a little living quarters area, so for one person to sit and sleep and all that business. I believe it's supposed to have an S1 power plant, S1 shield, and it's just a little utilitarian advanced starter ship. It does pretty much what the Titan does. And I'm 1,000% okay with that, because really we kind of needed a starter ship for Drake. We didn't have one until now. The Buccaneer is not that,
no.
and the only thing that could have been dubbed as a starter was the Cutlass. And let's be honest, the Cutlass
too
is
big.
a wonderful ship, but it's too big.
Yeah,
And it's too expensive as well. You think about this as from a purely transactional point of view, the getting on point for a person wanting to play Star Citizen. I would assume, and this is pure speculation and assumption, that it will be between $60 and $80. It'll probably be around Nomad price as well. This is, again, pure speculation. And okay, it's not quite as easy to swallow as the $45 for an Aurora or a Mustang, but when you take into consideration the capability, I think it's going to be a getting on point for a lot of people.
Do you think that CIG might be incentivized to make ships in that class as opposed to ships in that $45 Aurora size class? Like, as the game becomes further and further, it's easier for them to sell a higher and higher buy-in price, and they start to angle these ships as being like, well, you could spend $45 for this, starter ship that'll get you into the game, or you could jump for an extra $20 and spend $65 on this much better ship that carries you for longer.
I think you may be right there. I think they're definitely incentivized for it. I also just genuinely believe that the Aurora and the Mustang are just too small for what they're actually creating now. Simply put, a starter ship, at least in my eyes, should be able to, take you from point A to point B in most places that are civilized, I'd say. So Stanton for sure, maybe not Pyro. I don't know. Pyro is quite dangerous. But to me, a starter vessel should be capable, and it should be allow me to engage the game in a meaningful way, and allow me to try out the game and then buy more specialist gear in the game if I so desire. And I just think that the Aurora and the Mustang are a little too small to allow that kind of introduction. And as a result, there is definitely, I think there's a gameplay incentivization to make these slightly larger, more advanced starters. I think there's a great term for them. But also probably from a financial point as well, it's a little bit easier to sell this now, because you can kind of give reasons for having a larger ship,
Yeah.
So, you can say, oh, well, the systems are massive. The Aurora and the Mustang are great, but you're going to have to stop up at fuel stations, and those fuel stations might not even be available in certain locations, but this might be able to get you further, and it also generates a bit more revenue as well. But they're also just much higher quality products too. That's the other thing.
They are.
And if I take my tinfoil hat off for a second, and all the rest of that business, they're just high-end, high-quality products.
They are, and I think we could really do with getting those smaller starter ships updated, because it does sound like, from the way you're describing it, and if it is true, it sounds like they could start to suffer from power creep, in that you really don't want to outclass those small. Like, there needs to be a reason for the $45 ship, right? You can't tell people they're going to be at a disadvantage. Obviously, there's some disadvantage just naturally being a ship with an interior like the Nomad versus something like a Mustang, but you can't have people buying into the game at a minimum price and then feeling very disenfranchised based on the fact that their ship isn't covering the basics, right?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you mentioned this, because I've actually been I had quite a lot of playtime just recently with both the Aurora and the Mustang, because the first video review I want to do is on those two ships. They're the most important ones in my opinion, because they're the getting on point for people. I was surprised at their actual capability, but also equally a little disappointed at their lack of capability. So what I mean by that is, from a gameplay point of view, both ships fly well. They both have decent-ish fuel economy for a nice civilized system like Stanton, with lots of fuel stops and places like that I can go off and get fuel. And combat-wise, they are relatively capable for very light combat duty. So they're not terrible ships by any stretch of the imagination, but when we see the future and what that entails, I don't think they're going to do particularly well. And I would suggest that the advanced starters like the Titan, like lesser the 100i, but it's still there, and hopefully this, the Drake Cutter, are going to be more of the choice to use. Nomad as well in that category, because they are larger, more capable ships, and they just have a greater range. And it would be nice to see the Aurora and the Mustang be giving a little bit of love, just generally speaking, because they're both.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mustang more recently had an update, but it's a little old now. And the Aurora is an old girl. Yeah, it's just old
that one's
girl.
due for
Really,
that one needs some help.
Yeah, it does, because it just looks like a flying coffin right now, and it's just nothing gets away from that.
Yeah. Did you? So, in your opinion, then, let's say hypothetically speaking, game is doing well. We're 2 years past launch. Terra is the starting system, and somebody hops into the game in a $45 Aurora. What do you think the game would be doing itself justice? Rather, how long do you think it would require that newcomer to grind the game and kind of make a living in that Aurora before they're able to afford something like a Cutter, let's say?
I mean, I would hope it wouldn't be too long. That's a really good question. It's one I've not really thought about before. There are a lot of unknowns, so it's really hard to give a solid response to that.
Absolutely,
but I would, because there's just so many different intangible
so many things that aren't even
we
in
don't
the game.
know about.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it were Terra, a nice civilized system, I mean, I would hope that you'd had about, I don't know, 20 hours of gameplay maybe in the Aurora, maybe a little less than that. To like earn. I mean, I don't know how long does it take now to get out of an Aurora? It's not that long.
It's inconsistent because of how unstable the game is. But
yeah,
I think you can play for just a few hours and at least be able to rent one of those ships. That's
a good point. Rental. Yeah, I think renting should be very quick. I think actual purchase should be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I would use Elite Dangerous as an example of a game that has quite decent ship progression. You get out of that little Sidewinder very quickly. I think it's called Sidewinder or whatever the hell it's called, into something a little bit bigger relatively swiftly. But that's about 10, 15 hours of gameplay, I think. Cause,
that sounds good to me, I think.
Yeah, I would want that to be the case, because it gives a person more than enough time to get used to the flight characteristics. Because I'm thinking about the average Joe. The average Joe schmo is just fire up the game for the first time, not the seasoned veteran player. It gives them time to get used to the characteristics of a ship, nice and easy to repair if it gets dinged. It's like having your first car, isn't it? You're not going to immediately get into a Ferrari. You want to start off in a little, a little easy to use vehicle that you can ding up a bit, and it'll be all right. So I'd say like 10 or 15 hours of gameplay, to earn enough money to actually own a bigger ship.
Yeah, I like that. I think in 10 hours, you get a good idea of the game. Maybe you made a friend or two. Like, you understand what's going on and how serious the game is, and then you drop some serious money on something like a Cutter or a Nomad, or even make a whole A if you really wanted to go into a single profession. But I like that sort of benchmark, 10 hours or so, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that shifts around and how that changes as more professions come online.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. It feels like it's enough time to allow a person to get used to the game, but not get bored, because that's the thing. You've really got to straddle that line to having incentivization that's achievable and attainable to keep a player's attention span.
Yeah.
Because people just go, okay, well, I'm not getting anywhere in this game. I'm going to play something else.
Yeah. And in those first 10 hours, you might not be giving them the ship to unlock, but you should be introducing them to maybe new moons and new outposts and new factions and armor and stuff like that. There's an art to it, I'm sure, that they have to work out.
I'm hoping, from a theoretical point of view, that the starting experience for a new player is quite handholdy and has a sort of like an actual narrative tutorial type thing, similar to what they put in more recently in EVE Online. I use that as an example because that actually has a lot of similarities to what Star Citizen wants to do in terms of its open world, gameplay. And I played EVE a while ago and didn't play it for very long because it was very hands off. I couldn't understand it, and it was very brutal.
Yeah,
I have a very nasty suspicion that Star Citizen could be that way as well. I hope that you have this tutorial where you kind of get you introduced to who the IAE is, where you fit in the universe, some of the alien races maybe. It's narrative driven. You're talking to NPCs, and then after that sort of like 5 or 10 hour period, then you're sort of handed over the reins, and you've got enough money accrued to be able to go, okay, well, I really enjoyed the cargo part of the tutorial, or I really enjoyed the mercenary part of the tutorial, and you buy a ship according to your preferences.
Yep. Or at least give you the option. And
Yes.
if you ever want to break out at any given point because you like something a lot, boom, it just takes you in that direction. You could, there's like, the new player experience could make or break the game. And I think
Absolutely.
if they do it right, they get really high retention. There's so many different ways to play this game, at least planned. And if they were able to fit all of those into the tutorial without going too deep into them, but just letting the player know that they're there, they could get really good retention, I think, from people who are interested in just doing things in space.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it has the possibility and the opportunity to be the game for everyone because it's got so much flexibility. It really does. It will be, as you say though, made or broken on the tutorial and the new player experience. If they do it right, easy, no problem. If they do it wrong, you're going to turn people away and it's going to be considered too hardcore, or too niche. You know?
Looks like they're getting deep into that next year, so we'll have to see how it goes.
Absolutely.
But this cutter came in as, like you said, sort of an advanced starter. It's got some space for cargo maybe, but mainly just kind of a generalized ship for people early in the game. Then there's also the Corsair, which is a larger exploration style ship. Mm-hmm. And then the Vulture's coming out soon with mining. We know that the STV, which is a general kind of cargo sort of racing and generalized ground vehicle. The Mule also. The Scorpius came out this year. There was a lot of vehicles that came out. The Hull A too was one of them.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the variety we're seeing in ships that have been coming out recently? And do you think that they're filling things out as you would expect? Do you think they're going in weird directions in some places? What's your overall vibe from that?
If I weren't if I wasn't paying as much attention to the game, I would feel a little bit disappointed in some of the ships because they seem to be focusing on smaller vessels or stuff that's already been done and doing skews of those ships. Understanding the game where it is and the fact that there are certain aspects of the games that aren't there yet, and the want to not bring out ships for gameplay that doesn't exist, I am comfortable with what they've brought out. I like a lot of the ships that they brought out, and I found them to be fun and enjoyable vessels to own. I haven't bought all of them. Actually, I've bought none of them, I think. No, I have bought a Steve. I think I bought a Steve.
Okay. It's an easy one to pick up, I think.
Yeah, it's an easy one to pick up. What's the point? I like driving it around. It's a lovely little thing. But no, I'm okay with where they're at right now. I am traditionally a big ship guy. I really prefer capital grade ships or larger vessels, that kind of experience. That for me is that's my sci-fi. I was never the person who I never wanted to be Luke Skywalker or in the X-Wing. I wanted to be, the Grand Admirals in the Imperial Star Destroyers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sending orders and telling people to do things. That's my thing. And those
blowing
ships
up planets and stuff.
Exactly. No, it was a mining laser accident. Okay?
Right. Yes. Accidentally blowing up planets.
Accidental discharge came. It was what it was.
Our bad, billions of people.
Damn it. But no. I know those ships are far off, and I'm okay with that. I like the ships they brought out. Every single ship they brought out has definitely pushed the boundaries forward a bit when it comes to what they're capable of, how they're designing ships, how they are producing them. And to my mind, at least, every single ship they bring out before the ship I want means that my ship will be that bit better. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mentality I take with it. I think it makes sense right now for them to focus on the gameplays they currently have. I'm okay with them bringing out permutations, skews, different manufacturers doing the same kinds of ships, because I think it gives a more full-bodied catalog of ships. So I'm okay with it. If I'm honest, I'm all right with what they brought out.
Okay. Well, to finish off, are there any ships that you really want to see that you haven't heard of or you don't think are being included anytime soon?
Anvil capital ship, 100%.
Yeah.
I want an Anvil capital ship. I absolutely adore the manufacturer.
And what would it be geared towards? Is it like a Javelin kind of destroyer? Is it an Idris? Are we talking a carrier? Like,
it's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
In my ideal world, it would be a full out and out big heavy warship. It wouldn't be necessarily the Idris, which is a hybrid carrier frigate. I think I'd like to see it be more Javelin-y-esque. But I also know that Anvil has a skew towards exploration as well, especially with Carrack. So I wouldn't be against it being a super long range, large scale capital vessel, bit like I guess I'm going to use a Star Trek reference here, but a bit like a Galaxy class, from the Next Generation. Big, huge flagship capital grade thing can hold its own in a fight, but is also for exploration.
Kind of like a supersized Corsair from Anvil.
Yeah, kind of. I'll be okay with that.
That's a powerhouse. That thing, everybody
just don't
would
make
fly
it asymmetrical. I'm good.
Yeah, you don't like that?
I like asymmetry for the visual change it brings to the universe, because everything symmetrical is a bit boring, but at the same time, I don't want to buy them because asymmetry annoys me slightly if it's not for a purpose. I know that sounds a bit contradictory. Like, I appreciate it. I get it. People like it, and I'm
you can see the draw in it.
Yeah. But for me, I only like asymmetry if it makes sense. Like the Inferno or the Ion with a big cannon on one side. That makes sense.
Okay. That's fair. Well, an Anvil capital class would be pretty sweet. I
please.
would love to see like a javelin with kind of like Perseus blood in it. You get a javelin with like some good close defense turrets in there, but also something massive on the front that can take out some capital ships. That'd be cool. But that sounds OP. So that sounds like a bangle, like a mini bangle, basically.
That just sounds like players need to be a bit more inventive how they take it out. That's all.
It's not PvP. I'm just introducing you to new combat mechanics.
Exactly. There you go. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, there you go. Just an accident, as always.
100%.
Well, Loken, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fantastic talk. There are very cool ships coming into the game all throughout this IAE this year. Big sale and free fly period for anybody who's listening to this before the event has ended. So just, if you ever wanted to try the game, it's free. Get in, check out these ships we're talking about. All of it is free, and you can go make some friends, make some money. You don't ever have to pay. And then once you come back in later, you'll be able to pick up right where your progress left off, unless there was a wipe, which there will be. Yeah. But this has been a great look into the Corsair and these newer ships. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining me for this one last time, and ask you to let everybody know once again where they might be able to find your content and where they can see you online.
No problem. First of all, I just want to say again, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great, first of all, to get to know you a bit more. This is the first time we've talked, and also just to have a good chat about ships. As for me and where you can find me, I am live on Twitch. So it's twitch.tv/Loken Plays, 4 days a week. That's 9 p.m. GMT, 4 p.m. EST. You'll find me usually playing Star Citizen, or it'll be some other cool new game, because that's what I tend to do. And you can also find me on YouTube. So that is youtube.com/Loken Plays. And I am doing mainly Star Citizen content there as well, focusing the channel down on that, and all the love and good vibes and supports there is fantastic. Twitter, I'm at Twitter, so at Loken Plays, if it still remains, because Musk seems to be hellbent on blowing it up. And
he's got a sore spot for Star Citizen content creators. Just deleting profiles.
Seems to. Yeah, he really does. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Well, thank you again. And thank you everybody for listening or watching this, whether on YouTube or a audio platform. Thanks for the supporters. Y'all are making it possible for me to do this every week. Thank you. And I hope you enjoyed the live show. And we'll see you again next week.